Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are opening up a file that, well, it sits right at the intersection of pop culture history, high-stakes public relations, and very, very thorny world of modern ideological conflict.
It is a fascinating one. It really is, because usually when we talk about culture wars, we're talking about politics or, legislation. But today, the battlefield is, it's entirely within the realm of fantasy.
Right. Specifically, the wizarding world.
We are talking about Harry.
We're talking about Harry Potter, but not just the books on your shelf or even the old movies. We are talking about the brand new HBO series that's in the work, and specifically the casting of a new Albus Dumbledore.
Which is, that's a seismic event in the entertainment industry. I mean, you have to remember, Dumbledore isn't just a character. He's a cultural archetype.
The wise old wizard.
The moral compass of the entire series.
Exactly. And normally, casting news is just fun. It's a fun thing to talk about. Who's got the best beard? Who can pull off the accent?
Right, who's going to hold the wand? But this particular announcement, it sparked a massive controversy almost immediately. Not because of who was cast, really, but what he said to the press, literally the moment he was...
We are talking about John Lithgow.
The legend himself. I mean, an absolute titan of the industry.
A true titan.
Yeah.
But the moment he stepped into this role, he stepped right into the firestorm surrounding the franchise's creator, J.K. Rowling. And that's really where our deep dive begins today.
It is. We aren't just looking at a press release here. We're analyzing a specific breakdown of the nation. And our primary source material is a video from the cultural commentator Amala Ekpuno.
And the title of that video is The New Dumbledore Calls J.K. Rowling Transphobic. So right away, you know what you're getting.
Absolutely. And Ekpunobi is a really interesting voice to guide us through this, because she often critiques what she sees as a certain kind of ideological conformity in Hollywood. So for her, this isn't just celebrity gossip.
Case study in how the industry handles ideological dissent, especially when there's, hundreds of millions of dollars on the table.
At least. So our mission today is to really unpack this. We're going to look at what Lithgow actually said, specific diss, as the source calls it.
And then we'll look at the counter-arguments presented by Ekpunobi, which get into, really fundamental ideas about logic, biology, and even the definition of evil.
And we are going to explore that whole art versus artist debate, but with a significant twist. It's not just about separating them anymore. It's about how Hollywood PR machines actively navigate that separation in public.
And let me just say to you, the listener, right up front.
Yeah.
This isn't just about wizards and wands. I know it sounds like it might be, but it's actually a really fascinating look at how public figures have to manage their reputations when they're caught between a massive paycheck and a powerful social movement.
Precisely. It really challenges all of us to define terms like good, evil, and even reality when they're being debated in the public square.
So grab your wand, or maybe your crisis management handbook, and let's get into it.
Do it.
Okay, so let's start with the news itself, because I think the context of the casting it's actually really important here. The source material establishes it clearly. John Lithgow has been cast as Albus Dumbledore in the upcoming HBO Harry Potter series.
Which, just on an artistic level, is a fascinating choice. Really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Just think about his resume for a second.
You've got Winston Churchill in The Crown. You've got the Trinity Killer in Dexter, which terrifying.
Utterly terrifying. And then you have Third Rock from the Sun. The man has incredible range. He can do that sort of towering authority. He can do genuine menace, and he can do whimsical, over-the-top comedy.
Which are basically the three core ingredients for Dumbledore, right?
They really are. You need all three of those.
Yeah.
But there's a logistical question here that we should probably touch on, and the source does as well. John Lithgow is 80 years old.
80.
And HBO. They're planning for this series to run for a decade. That's the plan. They want to adapt all 7 books, maybe over 10 years of television.
So if you do the math on that, that puts him at 90 years old by the time they're filming the Battle of Hogwarts.
Assuming everything runs on schedule, which, it never does.
It never does. It is a massive gamble on biology, frankly. We saw what happened with the original films. Richard Harris passed away after the second movie, and they had to recast with Michael Gambon.
And that completely changed the character. The whole tone shifted. Harris was this sort of fairy tale grandfather, very gentle, very soft. Gambon came in, and he was like a war general. He was gruff.
He was a very different Dumbledore. So the precedent is there. And our source, Ekpunobi, she points out that at 80 years old, Lithgow isn't just some actor looking for his big break.
No, he's an institution.
He's an institution. He does not need this money. He doesn't need the fame. He's got all of that.
Which makes his decision to take the role and to step into this whole controversy even more interesting. And of course, when you get cast in Harry Potter in this day and age, you don't just get asked about spell casting or the glue they use for the beard.
No, you get asked about the elephant in the room.
You get asked about J.K. Rowling. It is the inevitable question. I'm sure every journalist has it circled in red on their notepad.
It's question number 1.
So Lithgow gives this interview, and he starts off, pretty diplomatic. He acknowledges the weight of what Rowling created. He says she created an amazing canon for young.
Right. He gives credit where it's due, at least for the impact.
He uses this great phrase. He says it jumped to the consciousness of the society.
It is a great phrase because it acknowledges that Harry Potter isn't just a book series anymore. It's a shared language. It's how we talk about bravery or corruption or, friendship. It's a cultural touch.
And then he goes on to define the core themes of the books. And this is really important. He defines them as good versus evil and kindness versus cruelty.
Okay, and I want to pause on that for a second. Kindness versus cruelty.
It sounds nice.
Yeah.
It sounds simple enough.
It does. It sounds very nice. Very greeting card summary of the books. I mean, yes, of course, Harry is kind and Voldemort is cruel. But the books are also about death, government propaganda, fascism, the loss of innocence, the brutal complexities of war.
Sure, but for a soundbite in an interview, kindness versus cruelty works pretty well.
It works for a very specific purpose, because by framing the books solely through that lens of kindness, he is setting up a rhetorical trap for the author.
How so?
Because if the books are only about kindness, then anyone who isn't kind, by his very specific modern definition, is therefore betraying the very essence.
And that is exactly where he pivots. This is the quote that our source, Amala Ekpunobi, just latches onto immediately. He pivots from the books to Rowling herself and says, regarding her personal views, I find her views ironic and inexplicable.
Ironic and inexplicable, those 2 words.
Those are the specific words. And Amala Ekpunobi's immediate reaction in the source material is, well, she thinks he just dissed her publicly.
She interprets that phrasing as a direct and actually quite sophisticated attack.
Yeah, she literally asked the question, did Dumbledore just diss J.K. Rowling? And the answer she lands on is a resounding yes.
Yeah.
But let's break down why she finds that specific phrasing so aggressive. Let's start with ironic.
Why is that a diss?
Well, according to Ekpunobi's analysis, Lithgow is setting up a deliberate juxtaposition. On one hand, you have the books, which he just praised for being about kindness and good.
Right.
And on the other hand, by calling her views ironic, he is implying that she, the person, represents the opposite of that. He's implying she represents the cruelty and evil that she wrote against. So the irony he's pointing to is, you wrote the Bible on kindness, but you, yourself, are mean.
That's the argument. The source argues that he is essentially saying she wrote the book on kindness, but she has become the villain of her own story. He's using the themes of her own art to condemn her personal character.
And our source, Ekpunobi, obviously takes major issue with this characterization.
Oh, deeply. She uses the word crazy. She finds it crazy that someone can look at a person who is, in her view, simply subscribing to reality. And she's referring specifically to the reality that men are men and women are women, and frame that belief as evil.
It's that clash again, the artist's output versus the artist's humanity.
Exactly. Ekpunobi points out this contradiction. Lithgow acknowledges that Rowling must have a deep understanding of good and evil to write these books. So to then turn around and act as if her personal moral compass is completely broken, well, the source finds that tension to be pretty...
And there's that other detail, the age factor, which we mentioned. Lithgow is...
Yes, and Ekpunobi does not let that...
How does she use that in her argument?
She argues that at 80 years old, you should have enough life experience, enough wisdom, to be able to at least explain why someone holds a different view than you, even if you find that view abhorrent.
That's a key point in her argument, isn't it? She suggests that dismissing someone's deeply held beliefs as inexplicable, literally impossible to explain, is a failure of intellectual curiosity on his part.
A total failure. She says something like, if you are at the age of John Lithgow and you can't explain why somebody like J.K. Rowling has the views that they have, maybe there's a little bit more work to do on the subject.
Wow. So it's a pretty scathing critique of his level of engagement. She's essentially saying, you don't have to agree with it. No one is asking you to. But to say you can't even explain it?
It implies you haven't listened to a single word she's actually said. You've only listened to what other people have said about her.
Which leads us right into the next big piece of this, because we really do need to deconstruct that specific word. Inexplicable.
Yeah, words matter, especially when they're used this strategically.
So why does the source take such specific, granular issue with that one word, inexplicable?
Well, you have to think about what it actually means. Inexplicable means it defies logic. It has no cause. It's random. It's like a lightning strike or a glitch in the Matrix. It just happens with no reason behind it.
Right. I don't know why she did that. It's just inexplicable. It shuts down all further inquiry.
And Ekpunobi's entire argument is that Rowling's views are the opposite of that. She argues they are heavily, heavily based on logic. specifically biological.
The source phrases it as subscribing to reality.
Correct. The source's argument is that believing men are men and women are women is a stance that's rooted in physical, observable, biological reality. It has been the default stance of humanity for 99.9% of history.
So when Lithgow calls that view inexplicable, what is Ekpunobi saying he's doing?
She argues he's engaging in a form of gaslighting. He's pretending that a very standard, historically grounded biological view is some sort of bizarre, confusing alien concept that no rational person could possibly understand.
And this brings up what the source identifies as a paradox. Let's call it the paradox of understanding.
It is a really striking contradiction that she points out. On the one hand, critics like Lithgow display this incredibly nuanced, deep, almost academic understanding of the Harry Potter. They can parse the themes of Dumbledore's greater good, the subtle interplay of light and dark, the moral complexity of Snape.
They're literary scholars when it comes to the fiction.
Absolutely brilliant at interpreting the text. But the source claims that as soon as the topic switches from the fiction to Rowling's real-world views on sex and gender, all of that intellectual nuance just evaporates.
It's like a switch flips.
Yes, she says they abandon all logic and reason. The source describes it as using one set of very sharp, sophisticated cognitive tools for the art nuance, context, depth, and a completely different, much blunter set of tools for the artist herself. For the artist, they just use words like inexplicable to shut the conversation down.
And Lithgow, he tries to frame this by saying he takes the subject extremely seriously.
He does. Very careful to say that. He wants to be very clear that he is an ally and this is issue.
And he positions her stance as being antithetical to her own writing. But the source has a very, very different definition of what's actually happening.
Completely different. Ekpunobi posits that Rowling's views are not, and this is a direct quote from her, the most transphobic thing in the world.
That's from the source.
It is. She argues that simply recognizing biological distinctions that have, again, existed for all of human history, is not the same thing as hatred. It's not cruelty. It's categorization based.
So you have this complete split. Lithgow is saying it's ironic because she wrote about kindness, but now she acts with cruelty. And the source is saying it's not cruelty to acknowledge biology, so there is no irony to be found.
Precise. The entire conflict comes down to a fundamental disagreement on the definition of reality. For Lithgow, it seems the ideology of identity is the primary reality. If you identify as a woman, you are a woman, and to deny that is a cruel act.
Whereas for Ekpunobi, the biology is the primary reality.
Yeah. For her, if you are born male, you are a man. And stating that isn't cruelty, it's just a statement of fact.
And because they are operating from these two completely different definitions of truth, they're just talking past each other.
Completely. Lithgow calls her inexplicable because in his framework, hurting people's feelings for no discernible reason doesn't make it. But Ekpunobi calls him illogical because in her framework, ignoring biology doesn't make sense.
And that disconnect, it actually bleeds into how they view the production of this new show. Because there's this really weird factual dispute happening here regarding Rowling's actual job title.
There is. And it's a bit of a he said, she said situation regarding the credits on a major HBO production, that's rare.
So in this same interview, Lithgow makes a very specific claim about J.K. Rowling's involvement in the new series.
He says, and it's unequivocal, she's not really involved in the production at all.
Not really involved. And he goes on to imply that he's never even met her.
Right. He paints this picture of her as a distant figurehead. Someone who is just cashing the checks from afar but isn't actually in the writer's room or on set.
But the source, Amala Ekpunobi, she jumps on this immediately. She basically says, wait a minute, hold on.
She issues a direct correction. She points out that J.K. Rowling is officially credited as an executive producer on the show. And this isn't just some vanity credit where they slap her name on the poster to sell tickets.
Right.
Rowling herself has publicly described her role as being heavily involved in the day-to-day behind-the-scenes production. She reportedly has final say on scripts. She has casting approvals. She's guiding the direction of the lore.
So why would John Lithgow say she isn't involved? Is he just completely misinformed? Is he lying? What's the theory?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It could just be wishful thinking on his part, or, and this is what the source leans towards, it could be a very strategic PR move.
A PR move? How would that work?
Well, think about it. If you're HBO and you tell the segment of the fan base that is angry with Rowling, don't worry, the bad lady isn't actually touching the show. What does that?
It gives them permission to watch it.
It gives them permission to watch it. It creates a permission structure. You can enjoy this new version because she's not really involved. It separates the product from the perceived contagion of the crowd.
Okay. And Ekpunobi analyzes another part of Lithgow's statement here that she says reinforces this very idea.
She does. He says that while Rowling isn't involved, the people who are involved are remarkable.
The people who were involved are remarkable.
And the source interprets this as a very clever bit of rhetorical sleight of hand. He is lavishing praise on the team, the directors, the writers, the other actors, while very deliberately excluding the creator from that circle of praise.
So he's building a wall. We, the remarkable people, are over here making the good art. She is over there, uninvolved and, by implication, unremarkable.
Exactly. Ekpunobi's interpretation is that he's saying Rowling is not to be remarked. It's a form of silencing in her. It's an attempt to claim moral ownership of the franchise, good people on set, and push the creator herself into the shadow.
But Lithgow also defends the script itself.
Right.
He defends the source material.
He does. He's very clear on it. He asserts that in the Potter canon, and you have to assume he means script as well, there is, quote, no trace of transphobic sense.
And he sees Dumbledore, his character, as a role that embodies kindness and acceptance.
And he wants to assure the audience that the toxicity he perceives in Rowling's personal views has not somehow infected the text. He's basically saying the water is safe to drink, the art is pure.
But our source, Ekpunobi, she has a rebuttal to this canon argument too. And it's actually a really interesting bit of literary critique.
It is. She essentially argues that you cannot surgically remove Rowling's worldview from her writing, whether you like that worldview or not.
Why not?
She argues that while there may be no blatant transphobia, there are no characters in Hogwarts, long speeches about gender identity, the books themselves are fundamentally rooted in what she calls sex-based.
Okay, what does she mean by sex-based?
She means that Rowling writes boys as girls. The dormitories are separated by sex. Social dynamics, the teenage romances, are overwhelmingly heterosexual, and the way the characters show up in the world, as the source puts it, is based on a very traditional binary biological reality.
So even if the text isn't overtly political, its entire structure is built on a certain world.
That's the argument. Ekpunobi is saying that the world of Harry Potter, the world that Lithgow loves, relies on the very same biological distinctions that he now claims are
So when he says there's no trace of it in the book, the source is effectively saying it's everywhere, it's the foundation. You just call it reality when you read it in a story.
Correct. And that is the central catch-22 for him. He loves the world that Rowling built, but he seems to reject the foundational logic that built it.
Now, this is where we have to zoom out, because this interview didn't happen in a vacuum. The source brings up a really crucial piece of context that helps explain why this might be happening right now.
Context is always king. And usually when an actor speaks out this forcefully, there is a promotional calendar lurking somewhere behind it.
And the source gives this a name. She calls it the Jimpa factor.
The Jimpa factor. And this, according to the source, is the key that unlocks his entire PR strategy.
All right, tell us about Jimpa. What is it?
So Jimpa is a film that John Lithgow is currently promoting. It's the project he is doing the press tour for right now as he's making these comments.
Okay. Is it like a big blockbuster?
No, and that's really important. It's an indie film, a much smaller, character-driven art house. And in this film, John Lithgow plays a gay grandfather. And the plot of the film revolves around him reconnecting with his estranged daughter, who has a non-bi child.
Oh, wow. Okay. I see where this is going.
Right. So the entire premise of the film he is actively promoting is centered on LGBTQ+ and non-binary theme. It is a movie that is explicitly designed to appeal to a progressive, queer-affirming...
The exact same audience that is leading the boycotts against J.K. Rowling.
Bingo. So now you have to put yourself in John Lithgow's shoes, or... maybe more importantly, his publicists. You are trying to sell this tender, socially conscious indie movie to a very specific demographic.
Right, the film festival crowd.
The film festival crowd. But at the exact same time, you have just accepted a massive multi-million-dollar paycheck to star in a franchise created and controlled by the person that demographic considers to be public enemy number one.
He's caught in a massive conflict of interest, a cultural crossfire.
It's a PR nightmare. The source describes these layers of difficulty. If he goes on the press tour for Jimpa, and he doesn't say anything about the Rowling elephant in the room, the narrative immediately becomes, John Lithgow is a hypocrite. He plays an ally in his little indie movie, but he happily takes the transphobes' money for the blockbuster.
So he has to attack her to maintain his credibility for the other project.
The source suggests it creates a problem for him that makes a public distancing not just an opinion, but a necessity. The ironic and inexplicable comment isn't just a random observation he had. It's a shield.
It's him signaling to the Jimpa audience, hey, I'm on your side. I'm with you. Yes, I'm taking the money over here, but I don't like her, so please still come see my sensitive indie movie.
That is precisely the source's. It's a necessary strategic move to protect his credibility with the audience he needs to win over for his current film.
The source frames all of this as an economic reality, of modern Hollywood.
Yes, and Ekunobi critiques this dynamic very sharp. She says that actors want to benefit from Rowling's creation. They want the prestige of playing Dumbledore. They want the HBO salary, the 10 years of job security, but they don't want to pay the social cost of being a associate.
They want the art without any of the artist's perceived baggage.
Which leads to these, as he himself put it, ironic situation. But the source argues the real irony is on the actors, who are twisting themselves into rhetorical knots to justify working for someone they condemn.
It's really interesting because this isn't the only way to handle it. The source actually compares Lithgow's very aggressive approach to another actor who faced a similar question
Yes, this is the comparative case study. We can call it the case of Keira Knightley.
Right, a deep dive into how to handle the question.
Because let's be absolutely clear. Every single actor attached to the Wizarding World, new or old, gets the question. It is an implicit part of the contract now. You have to have an answer ready.
So what was the situation with Keira Knightley?
So Keira Knightley was hired to voice one of the new audio. She played Professor Umbridge.
Oh, that's perfect casting. She can do that sickly, sweet Malice incredibly well.
She's perfect for it. But of course, during the press tour for the audiobook, she was asked about the boycott against Rowling. The interviewer specifically asked if she was aware that fans were calling for a boycott due to Rowling's, quote, ongoing campaign against trans people.
That is a very loaded question.
Extremely loaded. And so what was her response? Did she call Rowling's views inexplicable? Did she denounce her and throw her under the bus?
I'm going to guess not.
Not at all. She played what Amala in the source material calls the ignorance card, and she combined it with a vague plea for coexistence. Her direct quote was, "I was not aware of that. No."
I was not aware of that. Really?
Yeah, that's what she said.
Do we? Do we believe that?
Yeah.
Keira Knightley, a very famous person living in the UK working in the art, was not aware of arguably the biggest literary and cultural controversy of the last decade.
It strains credulity, to say the very least. But as a PR move, it's brilliant. It's almost genius. By claiming ignorance, she just removes herself from the battlefield entirely. She can't possibly have an opinion on something she doesn't know about.
And then she pivoted to a general platitude, I assume.
Immediately. She gave a very general, very safe answer. She said something like, I think we're all living in a period of time right now. We're all going to have to figure out how to live together. I hope that we can all find respect.
We're all going to have to learn to live together. It's the ultimate non-answer answer.
It's diplomatic, it's vague, it offends absolutely no one, it's perfect.
And the source analyzes this as a kind of sorry, I'm not sorry answer.
Yeah. Ekpunobi characterizes it as a polite but firm refusal to engage or to condemn. It's essentially her saying, look, I'm here to do a job, I'm not getting into this fight, and for heaven's sake, can't we all just get along?
And the source prefers this approach to Lithgow.
Oh, significant. Ekpunobi explicitly says she wishes Lithgow's route.
Yeah.
She says, I wish that was somewhere near the answer we got from John Lithgow.
Instead of what she calls throwing her under the bus.
Knightley maintained a careful neutral ground. She didn't bite the hand that was feeding her. Lithgow, in the source's view, went on the offensive specifically to protect his own reputation on another problem.
But Lithgow isn't the only one who has done this, is he? The source makes a point of listing quite a few other names who have taken the more aggressive, condemnatory route.
It's a veritable who's who of the original Potter film universe.
Who is on this list of detractors?
Well, you have Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint, the main trio.
Oh, Golden Trio, yeah.
And Chris Columbus, who directed the first two foundational films.
So the very people who built the on-screen franchise, or rather the faces of it.
Or, as the source frames it, the people whose entire careers Rowling built.
That's the core of the critique, isn't it? That sense of betrayal.
It is. Ekpunobi says it blows my mind. She points out that Rowling launched their career. I mean, without her imagination, without her writing these characters in a cafe in Edinburgh while she was a single mom, Daniel Radcliffe might just be a guy doing regional theater. Emma Watson might not be a UN ambassador.
Their entire platform, their fame, their wealth, it all flows directly from her creation.
And yet they have become some of her loudest and most prominent public critics.
The source sees this as a profound betrayal.
She does. She frames it as people actively distancing themselves from this outspoken, controversial individual while still holding on very tightly to all the benefits of the legacy. It's the definition of having your cake and eating it too. You get to keep the fame, you keep the residuals, but you also get the social credit for attacking the source of it all.
So, okay, we've heard the critique of the actors, we've heard the analysis of the PR strategy strategy with Jimpa. But the source, Emila Ekpunobi, she also offers a specific defense of Rowling herself.
She does. And this is a really important part of the video because it provides the direct counterweight to Lithgow's claim that Rowling's views are inexplicable. This is the part where the source attempts to explain these.
Right. So if John Lithgow says there's no coherent reason for her views, what does the source say the reason?
Well, first, before she even gets into the reasons, she asks for grace.
Grace.
Yeah, grace. She argues that these actors and critics should give Rowling more grace, maybe a second look. She believes that if you actually read what Rowling writes in her long essays, rather than what people tweet about her in 280 characters, you see a very different picture.
And what does the source say that picture is? What's the substance behind it?
Ekpunobi argues that Rowling takes immense time and care in substantiating those. They aren't just random, angry outbursts on social media. They are long-form essays, cites research. She articulates deeply held convictions about women's rights and safety.
The source actually lists some of these specific motivations.
She does. And it's a key point. None of them, in the source's view, are about hating trans people. The motivation is framed as being entirely different.
So what are these motivations, according to Ekpunobi?
The first is protecting women. The second is, interestingly, protecting men, and then safeguarding women's privacy and what she calls their innocence.
Innocence is an interesting and very specific word choice there.
It is. It suggests a desire to maintain certain boundaries or protections, particularly for children and young women. And the source gets even more explicit, mentioning Rowling's desire to be saving women from being victims of sexual assault in different facets.
So the source frames Rowling's entire motivation as being about physical safety and privacy.
Safety and what she calls meaningful work. Ekpunobi strongly rejects the idea that these motivations constitute evil or cruelty.
Which brings us right back to Lithgow's kindness versus cruelty binary that he set up at the beginning.
Right back to it. The source is essentially asking the listener, is it cruel to want to protect women's privacy and change? Is it evil to be concerned about the safety of female inmates in prison? She's reframing the entire debate.
The source positions these concerns not as bigotry, but as meaningful work.
Exactly. So when John Lithgow looks at all of this and says it's inexplicable, the source is basically shouting back. Here's the explanation. It is right in front of you in her essays. You might disagree with it. You might think her fears are unfounded or overblown, but it is not inequitable. It is a coherent moral framework focused on the safety and definition of biological women.
It just so starkly highlights the gap in perception. One side looks at her words and sees an erasure of identity, and the other side looks at the exact same words and sees a protection of reality.
And that gap, that chasm, that's where this whole controversy. It's why an actor like Lithgow feels not just permitted, but compelled to speak out because he sees an attack on a vulnerable identity. And it's why a commentator like Ekpunobi feels to defend her because she sees a defense fundamental reality.
So let's try to synthesize all of this. We have unpacked a lot here.
We really have. We have covered casting, PR strategy, indie film promotion, literary theory, and the very definition of truth. It's been quite a...
We started with a simple casting and John Lithgow as Dumbledore. A seemingly perfect match on paper, but a profoundly complicated one in practice.
Because in the year 2026, you cannot just cast an actor. You cast their politics, you cast their public statements, you cast all of their PR baggage right along with them.
And we saw how Lithgow attempted to navigate this incredibly complex landscape, balancing his role in the billion-dollar wizarding world with his role in the small, progressive film Jimpa. He was trying to serve two masters.
He really was. The paycheck from J.K. Rowling and the applause from the indie film crowd. And his solution was to try and cleave the art from the artist, to praise the creation while condemning the creator as inexplicable.
But then we also saw how our source, Emila Ekpunobi, systematically challenged that logic. She argued that you cannot call biology inexplicable, and you can't truly separate a creator's worldview from the world that she created from scratch.
And she highlighted what she perceives as the ingratitude of these remarkable people who seem to want to inherit the kingdom while simultaneously banishing the queen who built it.
It really is a fascinating and very modern case study in how we consume culture today.
It forces us to ask that age-old question, can you kill the author? Can you truly separate the creation from the creator when the creator is not only still alive, but is very vocal and is an executive producer on the show?
And that really brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the list, something for you to chew on after you take off your headphones.
John Lithgow said something really profound in that interview. He said the canon jumped to the consciousness of the society.
Meaning it's ours now. It belongs to all of us.
But does it? When a piece of art becomes that huge, a global phenomenon, does it truly belong to the society that consumes it? Or does it, And will it always remain tethered to the personal, evolving views of the person who sat in a cafe and wrote?
And here's the real kicker. The question that I think John Lithgow has to answer for himself every single time he puts on those robes. Can an actor truly inhabit a character who is meant to be the embodiment of kindness, like Albus Dumbledore, while publicly condemning the person who wrote the very words of kindness they're being paid to?
Is that act of public condemnation in itself a violation of the kindness the character sends? Or is it, in his mind, the ultimate act of kindness, defending those he feels are being marginalized by the author?
That is the question. And honestly, I think the answer probably depends entirely on which version of reality you subscribe. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. See you next time.
Goodbye.